Today on the Daily Dose, pandemic smallpox. One to 2 weeks after exposure, smallpox patients experience acute fever and chills, headache, nausea, and severe muscle pain. By the 4th day of illness, a characteristic rash known as macules appear on the skin. Macules develop into raised bumps or papules, turning to vesicles when the bumps fill with lymph fluid. Vesicles become pustules when the clear fluid takes on a cloudy appearance. In the final stages of the disease, the pustules dry up and scab off, leaving smallpox victims with permanent, lifelong scars. Of the two types of smallpox viral infection, variola major has a 30 to 50% fatality rate, while variola minor has a 1 to 2% mortality rate among unvaccinated patients. In rare cases, variola major victims develop hemorrhagic smallpox, which causes severe blood loss into the skin and vital organs. Hemorrhagic smallpox victims reach such an accelerated rate of cardiac decline that most victims are dead before the first macules appear on the skin. Another rare form of smallpox, known as flat type, affects approximately 5% of variola major patients. If a flat top victim is lucky enough to survive the disease, most are spared the humiliation of permanent scarring since the lesions form beneath the surface of the skin. While the origins of smallpox remain in question, the disease is widely believed to have originated in Africa approximately 10,000 years before Christ, spreading out into India and China along early human trade routes. The first recorded smallpox epidemic struck in 1350 BC during the Egyptian-Hittite War, while the earliest physical evidence of the disease was preserved in the mummified body of Pharaoh Ramses V, who reigned in Egypt during the years 1149 to 1145 BC. Smallpox expanded into Europe between the 5th and 7th centuries, causing untold death, disfigurement, and blindness. In the 18th century alone, smallpox killed an estimated 60 million Europeans, including 5 reigning monarchs. By the 20th century, smallpox was a significant disease in every country throughout the world except Australia, with worldwide death toll estimates ranging between 300 to 500 million lives. Carried abroad by European explorers, smallpox is thought to be responsible for killing nearly all of the native inhabitants of the Americas. In South America, smallpox spread overland following the arrival of Spanish settlers in Panama and Colombia. The disease took the life of Incan Emperor Huayna Capac and most of his court around 1526, followed by Capac's designated heir to the throne, Ninan Cayuchi. The deaths brought about a power struggle between the two remaining heirs to the throne, Atahualpa and his half-brother Huáscar, which effectively splintered the Incans' ability to unify as a nation. Many historians maintain that if the Incans had not been fractionalized by civil war, Francisco Pizarro would have failed in his conquest of the Incan Empire. In Mexico, when the Aztecs rose up in rebellion against Cortés, the Spanish were forced to retreat when they were grossly outnumbered by Aztec warriors. After the first battle, the Aztecs contracted smallpox from a dead Spanish soldier, sparking an outbreak which killed upwards of 60% of the Aztec population. When Cortés returned for a second assault on Tenochtitlan, he discovered that smallpox had killed more Aztecs than his own cannons. In North America, the largest, most highly organized native societies, known as the Mississippian chieftains, were nearly wiped off the earth between 1492 and 1680, well before the first Europeans established settlements along the Mississippi Delta. The decline of smallpox outbreaks began with the realization that survivors of the disease developed a lifetime immunity against secondary reinfection. Physicians and lay people alike began to expose healthy individuals to those infected with smallpox, hoping to produce a mild infection that would ultimately offer lifelong immunity. Known as variolation, the first written account describes a Buddhist nun in 1222 AD who would grind up scabs taken from smallpox patients, then blow the powder into the nostrils of non-immunized people. By the 1700s, variolation became commonplace in China, India, and Turkey, eventually migrating into Europe by the late 1700s. Although a small percentage of intentionally infected people would die from the disease, variolation reduced the total number of smallpox deaths by upwards of 80%. Born in Gloucester, England, Edward Jenner was orphaned at age 5 and went to live with his older brother near Bristol. Due to his strong interest in science and nature, at 13 he was apprenticed to country surgeon George Harwick in rural Sodbury, England. It was in Sodbury that Jenner first heard a dairymaid proclaim that she would never have an ugly pockmarked face from smallpox since she had previously been exposed to cowpox. 34 years later, Jenner would remember that statement in a way that would profoundly impact mankind's fight against the disease. In May of 1796, Jenner encountered another young dairymaid, Sarah Nelms, who had fresh cowpox lesions on her hands and arms. Collecting fluid from Nelms' suppurating lesions, Jenner exposed an 8-year-old boy to the infectious fluid. 9 days after exposure, James Phipps experienced chills and a rapid loss of appetite, only to recover fully by the following day. 2 months later, Jenner exposed Phipps to infectious material from a fresh smallpox lesion. When Phipps remained disease-free, Jenner concluded that he had successfully immunized the first human against the disease. When the Royal Society of Medicine refused to publish his findings in 1797, Jenner self-published his results and theories on smallpox transmission and immunization, coining the term vaccination from the Latin word vaccinia. Subjected to personal character attacks and public ridicule by many in the science world, Jenner would so devote his life to the cause of vaccination that his private practice and personal affairs began to suffer. Although Jenner made no attempt to enrich himself with his discovery, 26 years after his successful inoculation of James Phipps, British Parliament recognized the value of his work by awarding Jenner the sum of £10,000. By 1842, smallpox vaccination had become so routine in England that an Act of Parliament made the practice of variolation a felony under penalty of law. Today, smallpox is considered a vanquished disease, thanks in large part to the work of Edward Jenner and the production of the world's oldest commercial smallpox vaccine, known as Dryvax. First produced in the 1800s by American Home Products, a predecessor to Wyeth Laboratories, Dryvax was given to nearly every American in the 1930s and 40s. The last outbreak of smallpox in the United States occurred in Texas in 1949, with 8 cases and 1 fatality. In 1967, the World Health Organization began a campaign to eradicate smallpox worldwide. Following a 10-year mass vaccination effort in some of the poorest countries in the world, by 1980, the World Health Assembly declared that the world was officially free of smallpox. In 1975, 2-year-old Rahima Banu of Bangladesh became the last person infected with naturally occurring variola major. And there you have it. Pandemic smallpox. Today on the Daily Dose.